Hi, welcome back to episode 2 of the Coin Watch series. In this episode, I'm going to be taking this coin and making it into the bezel of the watch. I'm starting off with a 1 rand coin, and I'm going to be boring out a hole in the coin and using this as the bezel of the watch. I'm using a 1 rand coin, and it's not the same alloy of silver as my current silver that I made. However, I'm going to use it to compare and see if there's any difference between the two alloys of silver. I might also change this in the future to be my actual alloy, just so everything matches in terms of quality, and if anyone does purchase this watch from me, it's not going to tarnish or corrode over time. I'm just going to neaten up the hole that I just drilled out of the coin, and this is where the crystal is going to sit. Here you can see my recycling of my silver, where the dust is accumulated and recycled back into the alloy. I'm grinding a flat spot on the bezel. This is going to be my reference surface for when I lay out the shape of the bezel and then carve it into the shape of the final bezel. Here you can see me laying out the final dimensions of the bezel. Please excuse my voice throughout this voiceover as I'm currently sick, but I've gotta get this video out, so I'm recording it anyway. I'm removing some of the excess material from the sides, and I'm dunking it in a bowl of water just to keep it cool throughout the grinding process. I've got the bezel rough ground, and I'm going to do some file work to get it to the final outside dimension. And here we have the final bezel. It's currently at a rough 120 grit. I'm going to take it to the Dremel and cut in a side profile to give it a very sort of gentle curve throughout the bezel. It will match the rest of the watch once it's done. And here we are with the final case so far. I've still got quite a bit of work to do with the case back and cutting the interior grooves, but for now we got to look at a very important part. This is a traditional mechanical watch movement. It's an ETA movement, but for this watch I'm gonna stick with a quartz movement instead of a mechanical option because I can't seem to find a automatic tiny movement to fit in the watch. This is an ETA F06 movement. It's a high quality quartz movement and it's gonna go inside the watch. I've changed my mind about this skull. I think a black dial on a silver watch isn't gonna look as striking as I want. So I'm gonna use one of these rocks instead. There's a whole bunch of stones and I'm not sure which one to use exactly. I've got some petrified wood, I've got some tiger's eye. I'm not quite sure what the purple one is in this one. And I'm basically gonna just turn one of these rocks into a watch style that matches the overall aesthetic that I'm going for. I think I'm gonna go with one of these two. I'm leaning more towards the blue or the green, but the chances are I'm going to either break this dial or I'm going to change my mind halfway through and redo the dial. So I'm just gonna try with this blue one and see how it goes. I'm using diamond bits for this cutting, and all the tools are pretty much gonna be diamond tipped tools. I'm boring out a really small bore for the dial of this watch. I'm just making sure to keep spraying it every few seconds just to make sure that all the heat gets dissipated. Any excess heat or any excess force is going to most definitely crack this stone and ruin the dial. This part must have taken me quite a long time because I obviously did a lot of grinding off camera. Like for example, I flattened the disc on this. And you can see it's still quite thick, so I have to thin it out. But I flattened the one side just so that I can glue it onto what do you call it, like a sort of base block or a mount. I'm gluing a piece of steel that's 0.2 millimeters thick to the back of the dial. This is going to add some strength when I cut this to be super thin. It's going to be about 0.1 or 0.2 millimeters in thickness. Obviously I'm keeping it sprayed with water to make sure it's nice and cool. and I'm doing this really slowly on a jig that I'm using. I can't really use high-speed steel or any other lathe tools with this technique. And that's the first view of our watch style. It looks really nice. I like the color, but it still is quite thick, and there's still a lot of material that I've got to remove. I'm using this diamond wheel to just rough out the most of the material as much as possible, and then I'm going to start flattening it out and getting it to the final thickness that I wanted the dial to be. I'm going to quickly grind out this steel plate, or the excess of it at least. It looks really cool in the dark. And this is the first view of the watch dial. It's super thin at this moment in time. I think the entire dial is about 0.4 millimeters thick. That includes the steel, which means the stone is actually 0.2 millimeters thin. If there was no steel in this, it would not work at all. I've drilled a hole in it and I've mounted it to that small block that you just saw, and I'm gonna sand and start finishing this dial to get a mirror polish. Normally I'd sand this to around 5000 grit, but for now I'm going to keep it at 1.5,000, and that's all for episode 2 of this series. In the next part we'll be refining the shape and getting this watch completely done. Thanks for watching.